Pedro Lopez, known as the Monster of the Andes, stands accused of one of the most chilling series of crimes in history. This is a story that begins in the heart of South America, in the year 1948. In the region of Tolima, Colombia, a child named Pedro Lopez was born into a world of hardship and struggle. Pedro was the seventh of 13 children, born into a family barely scraping by. Life was a daily battle for survival, a struggle that was only compounded by the internal discord within the family. The family's struggles were palpably evident in their interactions and dynamics. Yet, Pedro's story takes a darker turn as he was thrown out onto the streets by his own mother at a tender age, an act that would set him on a path of crime and violence that would make him infamous. The streets became his home, his school, and his battleground. It was a harsh environment that molded him, hardened him, and shaped the terrifying figure he would become. The first taste of crime came early for Pedro. His first recorded run-in with the law was for car theft, a seemingly petty crime that would prove to be the precursor to a life spent in and out of incarceration. His life was spiraling, and the world was yet to witness the full extent of the terror he was capable of. The path of Pedro Lopez is a chilling journey into the heart of darkness, a journey that began with a troubled childhood, a broken family, and a life on the streets. It's a journey that would lead him to become one of the most notorious criminals in history. From a troubled childhood, Pedro Lopez's journey into darkness was just beginning. This is the tale of the Monster of the Andes, a story of crime, terror, and a life that spiraled out of control. Stay with us as we delve deeper into the life and crimes of Pedro Lopez. Released from prison, Lopez embarked on a horrifying spree that would span countries and decades. With a chilling past behind him, Pedro Lopez was set free, a decision that would soon cast a shadow over South America. Fleeing from his native Colombia, Lopez found refuge in the neighboring country of Peru. It seemed like a fresh start, a chance to blend in amidst the bustling cities and sleepy villages. But beneath the facade of a simple migrant lurked a monster, one that was far from done. In Peru, the terrifying pattern that had marked his past began to re-emerge. Lopez preyed on the vulnerable, targeting young girls from impoverished backgrounds. These were children who often worked in markets or roamed the streets, their innocence cruelly snatched away in broad daylight. The frequency and brutality of these crimes sent shockwaves through the community, instilling a fear that was palpable. But it was not long before the law caught up with Lopez. His reign of terror was interrupted when Peruvian authorities arrested him. They were horrified by the brutality of his alleged crimes, the sheer number of victims indicating a level of sadism that was beyond comprehension. However, instead of facing justice in Peru, Lopez was deported back to Colombia. It was a decision that was met with relief by many, yet it also signaled the beginning of another chapter in this grim tale. As Lopez was sent back to his homeland, many were left wondering about the fate of his victims and the horror they had endured. Yet the true extent of Lopez's crimes was still to be revealed. The man known as the Monster of the Andes had left a trail of terror in his wake, but the full scale of his atrocities remained shrouded in mystery. As the authorities delved deeper into his past, they would soon uncover a story that was even more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. In 1980, the Monster of the Andes was finally unmasked. In the bustling market town of Ambato, Ecuador, a failed abduction attempt marked the beginning of the end for Pedro Lopez. An indigenous woman caught sight of Lopez as he attempted to lure her daughter away, and her cries for help led to his arrest. In the cold confines of the interrogation room, Lopez was initially mute, a stark contrast to the terror he had inflicted. However, as the pressure mounted, the floodgates opened. Lopez confessed to murdering hundreds of young girls across Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador. His revelations were chilling, each detail more horrific than the last. He spoke of his victims as if they were mere objects, his remorse as absent as their innocent lives. It was a confession that left even the most hardened law enforcement officials in disbelief. The numbers were staggering, the details unsettling. Yet, there was skepticism. Could one man be responsible for such a horrific reign of terror? The answer came in the form of mass graves. As investigators followed the trail of Lopez's confessions, they unearthed the grim reality of his claims. Hidden beneath the earth were the remains of his victims, their lives cruelly cut short. Each site was a chilling testament to the atrocities Lopez had committed, a haunting echo of his monstrous acts. As the evidence piled up, so too did the realization of the horrifying truth. Pedro Lopez, a man who had moved among them, was a predator of the vilest sort. His confessions were not the ramblings of a madman, but the chilling admissions of a remorseless killer. This was no longer about a series of missing persons cases across 3 countries. It was about one man, one monster, who had single-handedly inflicted a reign of terror unlike any other. Pedro Lopez had become one of the world's most prolific serial killers. Despite the horrific nature of his crimes, the fate of Pedro Lopez is as unsettling as his deeds. In Ecuador, where the majority of his heinous acts were committed, he was finally put on trial. The courtroom was filled with a palpable tension, the air heavy with the weight of the atrocities he had committed. His crimes were so numerous, so terrible, that they almost defied comprehension. Lopez was found guilty, as the evidence was overwhelming. The court handed down the maximum penalty allowable by Ecuadorian law at the time, a mere 16 years. 16 years for a life of terror, for the countless lives he extinguished. It was a sentence that felt like a mockery to the memory of his victims, an echo of the injustice they had faced in their final moments. And then, in 1998, after serving the entirety of his sentence, Pedro Lopez walked out of prison a free man. The monster of the Andes, as he had come to be known, vanished from the public eye. His whereabouts became a mystery, his fate unknown. Rumors swirled about his disappearance. Some claimed he had returned to his life of crime, continuing his reign of terror in the shadows. Others believed he had been brought to justice in a less official capacity, his life ended by the hands of those seeking vengeance for his victims. But without any definitive proof, these remain nothing more than conjecture. The unsettling reality is that we may never know what became of Pedro Lopez after his release. His story is one that leaves us with a chilling legacy of terror and a litany of unanswered questions. And perhaps the most disturbing question of all, how could a man responsible for such monstrous crimes simply vanish, leaving no trace behind? The monster of the Andes vanished, leaving a chilling legacy of terror and unanswered questions, a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human soul, and the injustices that can occur when that darkness is allowed to flourish. The story of Pedro Lopez leaves us grappling with haunting questions. Our journey into the abyss of the human psyche, embodied by Pedro Lopez, the monster of the Andes, has led us to this moment, a moment filled with unsettling uncertainties and unanswered questions. We are left wondering, where is Pedro Lopez now? Is he still out there inflicting pain and terror, or has time finally caught up with him? Despite confessing to the heinous crimes of over 300 young girls across South America, Lopez was released from prison in 2005. His whereabouts since then have been shrouded in mystery. Some reports suggest he has been spotted in Colombia, others hint at his presence in Ecuador. Yet without concrete evidence, we are left in the dark. Then there's the chilling question of whether Lopez's reign of terror continues. The thought of this man, free to roam the streets, is a distressing notion. His modus operandi, his cunning manipulations, and his ability to blend into the crowd all add to this fear. The possibility of his continuing crimes is a horrifying thought that we cannot ignore. But perhaps the most troubling question is why this case hasn't garnered the international attention it deserves. Is it because the victims were marginalized young girls from impoverished communities? Or is it because the countries affected lack the resources to pursue an international manhunt? Either way, the lack of global outrage is a bitter pill to swallow. Moreover, the enduring trauma of his victims' communities is a poignant reminder of the lasting impact of his crimes. These communities continue to live in the shadow of his atrocities, their pain echoing through the years. The tale of Pedro Lopez, the monster of the Andes, is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of a man. His story is a grim testament to the worst of humanity, forcing us to confront the terrifying realities that some monsters are very real, and they walk among us.